Howdy, folks. Welcome
Hey.
to our SavageUniverse stream. The JM is still out and recuperating, but he's doing well. So thank you all for the thoughts and prayers and all that good stuff on that. And I think they even put up a GoFundMe if you'd like to throw some cash at JM for his recovery. So I'll go dig up that link here in a second. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we are currently running a Kickstarter for the 20th anniversary celebration of Savage Worlds. The brand new players books are kind of the special feature of this Kickstarter. And we're just about to unlock another stretch goal. So we are currently 1727 backers. Amazing. Thank you, everybody. That is a great number to see. There's still 2 weeks to go. And let's zoom down and see what that 170K goal is. We're about to unlock. The players books are an all-new 160-page softcover players book, retailing for just $20, and a $25 pledge gets you all the unlocks and add-ons that we're also throwing in with this. So there's a really cool players box that's coming with this, and a lot of the and there's also an accessories box. So for if you're game master and you didn't get in on the essentials box, this accessory box is pretty cool, and lots of new features. But there's 5 variant covers, and hopefully soon we'll be able to debut what the 5th cover is for the players book. But until we get to make that fun announcement, let's zoom down and see what the stretch goals are. So the players box currently comes, it's a magnetic flip top open with a ribbon pull tab, so you can pull your cards out of it easily. It's got a wet dry erase advance card, so you can mark your advances on your character and reuse it for different characters. We have a card stand, so you can put up your action card in front of your character at the table. And there's a player's journal, so you can keep track of notes from a campaign. There is a fold-out combat options chart, which is pretty awesome. There have been various fan and peg-made ones of these for several years now. We're like, hey, let's put one in a player's box so you can remind players easily that they can do all-out attacks, or they can do aiming and all those things and how those work. So that is a great unlock. And then there's also status cards, which are one of the close upcoming unlocks. So let's zoom down a little bit and see what we are unlocking at 170, because even I don't recall, even though I do all these posts. Here we go, GM card stands. So this is an awesome unlock, folks. I think we're still getting the layout figured out on just how many of these Game Master stands we can fit on a sheet. But with the accessory box, we will be able to put in a sheet of these GM card stands. So more than 2, less than 100, somewhere in there, card stands that will fit on a sheet.
I don't know. Careful about your promises there. I don't know that range of 2 to 100.
Right, more than 2, less than whatever fits on a sheet, or exactly what fits on a sheet. Less than goes a sheet, and so we're basically making sure that we get the right. We have to get the die cutting approved by our printer to make sure that there are enough margins and the machines all work. So that's a little bit of a process, and we've had a request up. But we've been pinging our printer hard and heavy recently. So it's one of many things where we're currently waiting on some a little more detail on. But the card stands will be in the accessory box. So if you're a game master and you're in this campaign to pick up some game master materials, the amazing and the campaign exclusive, it is $25 accessory box in the campaign. It will not be that price in the Pledge Manager, and we'll be using pledgemanager.com for our pledges in this campaign. Certainly not that at retail. So if you're not in the campaign,
we were kind of dumb when we built it. So yeah, the price is going to change a lot.
Right, it is stupid cheap. So grab a copy of.
We got a little too ambitious. Yeah.
Right. So yes, if you don't have the link, here we go in the comments wherever you're watching. I just threw that up. So that is the link to the Kickstarter campaign. If you haven't pledged now, get in on it. These player books are amazing. They're only $20. The pledge is $25, and you get all the unlocks to the player box and all that cool fun stuff that I mentioned above. We do have a special commemorative version of Suede, so it's going to be the 5th printing, but a whole bunch of extras. Our expected timeline for these is like first quarter next year, so maybe starting January, February, somewhere in there, so depending on how the winds blow on getting these things stateside. But that's, I think, January 2024 is the current estimate for delivery. So it's a little faster than our recent campaigns. And so I think during this stream, you guys will pledge, and we will unlock the 170K GM card stands and run on the way to the 180K power status cards. But other than that, I don't want to take too much time because Darrell has some really awesome stuff for you guys. So this is the first in a series of these kind of how-tos. We've done like how to build a box set with Simon before. And this is kind of in that same tradition of information for our ACEs and swag members. There's a really great free template we give out for swag folks on doing a one sheet. Darrell's going to show you how to open that up in InDesign and kind of walk through it. And we'll take your questions now. And then also any questions you guys have about the process as well, we will work that into future videos in this series. So this will be kind of an ongoing thing where folks from PEG will kind of talk through just all the various aspects of the writing, editing, printing, design, the behind the scenes stuff on becoming a swag and an ACE member, or starting your own game company, and kind of our competition. So whatever it is, whatever your ambitions are, that's them's the ticket. So I'll turn it over. Let me get all the other stuff off the screen. So yes, head to the Kickstarter, push us over. That'd be amazing. Maybe you already did because we were super close. And I'll get out of the way. And Darrell, we will start in on. There we go.
Hey, there we go. All right. So first off, for everybody that's watching, this is going to be very focused on a particular audience, right? And that audience is swag or ACEs, right? And that's basically you're doing a book, you're putting it out in PDF, and you need some mechanism to publish it. One of the tools that we have offered is on DriveThru. You can download it. It's the Swag and ACE, kit. It comes with templates, an InDesign IMDD file. That's what you're going to be looking for when you download it. And if you've never used InDesign before, you're like, all right, this is really cool, but what do I do with this, right? Like, where do I go from here? So this is like the 101 class, which is going to be, let's get you into InDesign, not from the ground floor. There's a lot of tutorials that'll teach you like, oh, here's how to build this page from scratch, which is where most people have to start from. But that's not what we're doing. We're doing hey, we've already got a template. How do you do stuff with it, right? And the other thing that we'll focus on as we go through is a little bit of learning how to fish. So as you've got questions, store them. I'm going to go over some stuff, and then we're going to stop in about like a half an hour. We'll answer some questions, and then we'll do the rest, as 102, 103, whatever, right? So you've downloaded from DriveThru your packet from us, and you've unzipped it, and it gives you a folder. And inside that folder, you'll see like an IDML. Forget about it. Don't worry about it. It does stuff you don't need to know. INDD, that's the file that you're going to open. That is an InDesign design file. That's going to look like this, that's displayed here when you open. The other thing that you're going to notice in that zip folder is a folder called links and a folder called document fonts. And in a perfect world, any image or background or anything like that you're going to be pointing to inside your InDesign file is going to be in that links folder. I say in a perfect world because if you're doing this solo or on your own, you can link those files anywhere you want. The only reason to put them in the links folder is so that anyone else in the world can use it. Right? So if it's only you, best practice is put it in the links folder, but you don't really have to. You can put it anywhere. And same with document fonts. If you've got specific fonts that you want to show up in the document, if the TrueType font or whatever is in that folder, InDesign will read it and display it inside this. And if it's missing a font, if you open a file and it's like missing a font, put it in this folder rather than installing it on your computer. It shows up just fine and you're good. Again, it's important for it to be there if you want to package it, send it to someone else to work on it, or send it to a printer to print it. That's outside of our scope, so not critical, but I also want people to know that's what it's for. That's what that folder's purpose is, And if you move these things around or put them somewhere, that's where they go. Same fold, wherever you put your document, links and document fonts go there. Okay. You can do a demo free trial of InDesign. It's like 30 days. So here's how to get the most out of your 30 days, right? Yeah, correct. Not everyone has users Doug documents. Exactly, right? But if it's only you using it, doesn't matter. When you open this up, you've got a million buttons, right? And your million buttons are going to be different from what I am showing here. So how to fish first lesson. If you click a window at the top, and hopefully, oh no, does that not show? Kind of, it doesn't really show. Okay, well, that's going to be a problem. Oh, it does show, it just is slow. All right, so window, workspace, and if you see there's these submenus here. And I use Essentials Classic. That's a view, and that's it's got docs and you can move things around in it. That's me. You can use Essentials, Interactive for PDF. You can try those out, and one of them is going to be right for you. I would start at Essentials Classic if it were me. If yours looks way different than mine, that's probably why. Second thing, that's probably why, is these menus on the side here. This is user defined. This is customized. And when you start off, this will be empty, or it'll probably have like pages or layers or whatever. If you're seeing a tool that I'm using and you're like, oh man, I don't have that and I want that, same thing. Window, and it doesn't show it, but there's all these, like color. I'll use color. And if I choose that, now this little menu pops up here and I can choose colors, blah, 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 blah. I never use this. That's why it's not on my toolbar. But if you did want it, you can just drag it and drop it, and it docks down here, and now you've got it forever, as long as you're using the Essentials Classic view. So if you're missing something, window, find the thing, click on all the things until you find it, right? And then you can dock it and you've got it. Other thing as a brand new user is you got all these tools on the left here. You're only going to need 4 of them, maybe 3, right? Maybe even 2. One is if you hover over that top arrow, it's called the selection tool. Everything on your page are called objects. This wolf is an object. This box with text in it is an object. This image with the Savage Worlds logo on it, that's an object. When you want to switch to different ones, use that arrow, make sure that's your tool, click on it. Now that's what you're working with. And you notice they've got drag bars and things like that. We can resize it up. It's going to flow up, down, whatever. That's what that tool is for. We'll use that more in a minute. Underneath it is direct select. You might not need that for a while. It's when we get into sub-objects and layers and things like that, I'll talk about this a little bit more. Just know that it exists and you might need it, but really, meh. The other one you really need is text tool, which is, it looks like a T for text, right? When you want to actually manipulate the text in these boxes, you want to be using this tool. So selection is going to grab the object itself. Text is going to let you manipulate the text inside. 90% of what you do creating these files and publishing them is going to be those 2 things only. Then the last one you might use is the rectangle frame. It's this guy right here. And that's how we can make new boxes to put art and things like that in. So you'll probably use that. Okay, here's this box that I just made. I didn't really want it. I want to use my select tool. You can right click and you can get a bunch of stuff. And there are certain shortcuts you can do, like the delete key on your keyboard. We'll just get rid of it, right? So that's just like the super basic navigation. For your purposes, you come with this file and it's got all of this stuff built into it. One of the things that it's got built in are paragraph styles. These are what your text is going to look like. You don't have to use paragraph styles. Like you can, like if you look, I'm going to grab a little piece of text here like this, your first paragraph or whatever, blah, 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 blah. I can manipulate it up top here. It tells me this is Palantino linotype as the font. I can change that to like leave Gothic or whatever. Now it looks totally different. I can do that. I shouldn't, right? Because the idea behind these paragraph styles is you're going to set the style for it. And then every time you use that style elsewhere, it looks like that. If you change it like this, you notice on our paragraph style menu, it's got a little plus next to it. And what that says is, well, this was body text with no indent for the start. The little plus says you changed it in some way, right? And the reason that you care about this is you're typing paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, and because you're changing your mind all the time on what you want things to look like. And I say, you know, this font idea, this was a terrible idea. Or this was a great idea, and I want it to be like this everywhere. As long as you've got the style, you can do it in one of two ways, right? If you right click on this, it doesn't even show the little sub menu. But one thing I can do is I can edit the style itself and make that change so it happens everywhere. And once I do that, it's done. One click, I am finished. I can also redefine the style as one of the options. And what that will do is then change it everywhere. You know, like, okay, cool. That's just what it is now. I'm going to use this wacky font everywhere where that paragraph style is in use. And then the secret one is if you hold Alt and click on it, that will reset it back to the default. So if you mess yourself up, Alt click makes all your crazy changes. It sends it back to factory, right? Highly important when you get in here because you will mess with it and you will regret it. So Alt click resets. Okay. So for your own purposes, you're probably going to want to have a new page. You know, like our doc's got these 3 pages filled with examples that you can copy and paste, deconstruct at your leisure. But we're not going to deal with that. We're going to make a new page, and that's going to be layout, pages. You can add a page, which will just add one at the end. I prefer insert pages, and that gives us a sub menu. We'll add any number of pages. This is built for PDFs, so it's a single page rather than spreads of 2. If you're doing it with spreads, you'll want 2. Anything else, fine, 1 or 2. And you can tell it where you'd like it to be. We're just going to put it at the end of the document, right? And now we've got this brand new page. This is what, in general, you're going to start with, a page. Why does it look like this? One of the things that you noted when we created the page is it says, what parent did you want to use? Let's look at the page menu. If you don't have the page menu, window, pages, you can make this, right? You've got 2 things happening here, these 2 panels. The top panel are the parents. The bottom panel are the pages themselves, right? So when we opened this document, we had pages 1, 2, and 3, which had stuff in them. We just added pages 4 and 5. In the parents, we have A front and B back. Well, let's take a look. If you manipulate these, or let's just double click it. Hey, what do you know? A front looks exactly like our page 4 that we added. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. It creates it, it's there. If we look at B back, hey, that doesn't have the crazy stuff on it. If we're just doing a regular page, we would probably prefer that kind of layout. So now we're looking at page 5, and it's saying it's using the A front, right? It looks like that. And I'm like, I don't want that stuff. If I right click, I can apply a different parent. Let's use that B back. And now our basic layout has changed, right? You can mess with those parents, and whatever you do to them will happen to everything in the real pages that's based on those. So it's a very powerful tool, and it's why it's structured like this. And if you don't understand why something on your page looks the way it does, look at the parent, because it's probably something coming from there. Also, if you're like, why can't I get rid of this thing? It's because it's on the parent, right? Like go deal with it there, duplicate your parent, make something new, change it around, set to that new thing in your real page, and you'll be smoother. You'll be able to go forward a little bit easier. That's kind of fundamental to how InDesign works. And if you understand that, you're halfway there to making your stuff work. Between the pages and parents and then the styles that you put on them, you can do almost anything, right? So now we need to put some text on our brand new page. We've got this text tool. Hey, cool. Let's do this the easy way. You just draw your space for the text and we can just start typing, right? Like blah, 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 blah. Probably just like grab, 1,000 words of text so we can drop it in here and see some things, right? Now, it looks funky. It looks weird. It's using like fierce sans, semi-bold, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know what's going on here. And that's because we don't have any properties set on what our default paragraph looks like, right? It's trying to do headers and blah, blah. 9 times out of 10, when you're typing, you want it to be your body text, right? So you just click anywhere in that paragraph styles, set the style for it. And now you notice it switches to look like we expect. For our style, we prefer that first paragraph has no indent. So we would have header, it's called. Right? We would start with some kind of header. Hey, let's do header 2. Header 1 is your topmost chapter or whatever. Header 2 is a subcategory inside it. Header 3 is a subcategory inside that, right? And we've got these predefined. Like you just click it and it's going to look like different things, right? And we've even built it in so it's got the cool bar behind it. Most of our documents don't do that automatically. So you're welcome, right? It's like a 301 on how to make it do that. We'll talk about that someday. We'll just do header 2. Now we've got our start, right? And we want that first one to not have an indent. Oh, look, we've got a style built. It says body, no indent, right? And so it moves it over. And if you're like, what we never, ever, ever want to do, and we get this in submissions all the time, is people will put a tab in there, or in the second one, it's like, oh, it's all going to be here, so we want to tab it. Never do that, y'all. Tabs are the devil. We're going to do those indents through the styles. We will have to go through and manually delete every one of those tabs. So don't do it. Same with spaces at the front. Like, forget that. No, just type the text, and then we'll format the text with our styles. And you can see there's different ones like, hey, the example read aloud. And you notice that adds space at the top and the bottom. It offsets it. Like it does these things. And if it doesn't really show here, but let's see if I can make it show. Oh, I can. You can edit them, right? Like I can go into the paragraph style and I can tell you like, hey, this example read aloud. It's going to inherit a bunch of properties from your body text. So if you make a change to that style, that's going to happen here too. But it's italic, unlike our regular body style. It's size 10, which might be bigger or smaller than the other one. And we can do all of these crazy properties like, oh, let's add a little extra indent, 1 pica, 1 whatever. There are settings in here that you can change it to millimeters, inches, whatever. Kind of doesn't matter. You're going to be eyeballing it in a lot of ways. I will not describe every one of these settings. You just play with them, right? But know that when you do this, it is affecting everything in your document that is using that style, and that's why it's good. So I do this once, and now it's fixed everywhere. So we type that out, and one of the other tricks for paragraph style is everything inside your document is built in what's called a story, right? A document might be a single story from the beginning to the end. A document might be 1 story per chapter. I actually prefer one story per chapter. Some people prefer it as a document because when you do to find and replace, Control F or go look in your menu, right? You'll notice it defaults to search within the story. So you can be like, hey, look for any instance of Savage Worlds. It's going to find it in the story, which means if you've got a 5-chapter book and they're all different stories, it's only going to find that in the current chapter. Sometimes you want that, right? Sometimes you don't. That's why you just change your search to be the document. And then you're going to find it everywhere, no matter how many different stories you've got. Generally, that's how I prefer it. And then these stories, they'll go inside this text box, right? You can change the size of the box up and down. And if you can see it, Lord knows if you can, you notice when I've made the box smaller, the text that I typed disappeared, right? It's cut off. And there's a little plus box here inside my text frame, and it turned red. And it's turning red to tell you, hey, man, you've got a problem. There's overflow text. You typed something and it is not showing up on the page. If you do this as a PDF, you're missing stuff. And if you looked carefully at many games out there, including a few of our own, there's gotchas, right? Like, oh man, something disappeared, and usually we catch it. There's on rare occasions we don't. Something like this happened. Like we added an image and it cut something off and we didn't notice, right? So one indication is the red plus, the red plus sign here that says you ran out of space, right? The cool thing is if you click that, whether it's red or not, you get a new cursor and it's going to be your text flow. I can click into an existing text frame and it's going to flow into there, or I can just click onto the page, which we've already got set up. And now this column flows to this column. And if I want the text to continue on to the next page, I just do the same thing down here. And now it's going to keep flowing and keep flowing. And there's a million ways to like do this smarter, but this is like 101, right? Like just get in there, make sure that your text flows, and when it's done, it's done. And I'm going to delete that because I'm going to show you the other way to tell that happened, right? It's slightly hidden by our tooltips there. But if you look, you can kind of see it just under the text. There's a little red dot at the bottom of the screen here. And it says 2 errors or whatever. This is InDesign trying to save you. And it'll try once again when you export. It'll be like, hey, man, by the way, you've got overflow text. Unless you specifically turn that warning off, don't. You want to know, right? It's going to try to save you. And when that happens, you got this thing called pre-flight. And that's going to tell you, hey, you've got some problems. These are going to be errors that show up on other people's PDFs or whatever. And one of them is my text. And you see that it says there's overset text on page 4. Hey, look, this is page 4. Aha, there's my overset text. Here's my problem. Let me fix it. Now that goes away, right? Other common error, missing links. Hey, look, this dire wolf image, right? So it's on page 1. Let me click there. Aha. So in this box, I've got this image of this wolf. Wherever its base image was, I can still see it, right? Like no problem, it's here, it will display, but this is a placeholder, essentially. It's copied it, it's kept in memory, and it's like, well, it's close enough. And for most purposes, doesn't matter. When you go to export a PDF where you've got much higher DPI on your images and things like that, that's where it's going to cry, because this will look fuzzy and not so great. Whereas if you have the real image linked, it will be fine. So what that's telling us is that image ain't there. Here's the next place that you would fix that. You got your pages, which showed you our parents and the pages that we're using. Links is another super important one. This is anything, usually images, but it can be text or PDFs and other things, all right? And it's going to be like, hey, here are the elements, these images that are here, and you can click on any of them and you can see information, like here's where it is pointed, and we can relink it. So if I have that image somewhere, I can go to that address, I can click on there, and it will resolve that missing link. It will reestablish it and be like, oh, okay, I've got the image, I'm cool now, like we're good. And this is also, I mentioned the text box thing, where if we wanted to put an image of our own here, we make a text box. How you add an image, first have something, a receptacle to put it in. That's what that rectangle tool is for in general. File, place. Place is a magic thing. So copy and paste, put stuff directly into your story, into your box or whatever. Place links it from a different file. Some people will say link text, like don't copy and paste text from a document into here, place it. For our purposes, 9 times out of 10, that's not what you want to do. They want to do that because it's like an Office document, and that means if somebody else updates the document, now it is updated in their InDesign file as well. We usually don't want that. We want it to be here. We're going to work on it here. We're going to do our things with it here. And if we never touch that original document again, hallelujah, right? Like, so for text, we're going to copy and paste and change the formatting on it, right? For images, we want to link because it might be modified, it might be resized or whatever. Make sure that's in the links folder, or at least we've got a way to do that, right? So we have place. It's going to say, well, pick something. You know, hey, what do you think? I'll just pick this, sure, background. Like it's here, right? That's going to put it in the square. If we use our select tool, select that, we can change our fitting on that image. I was like, hey, let's just stretch it to fit the frame. Like, well, that's what's important here, right? And there are two things that happen. One, with our select, we're doing this outer frame. We can make it bigger here. We can also, if we use control and resize, that will squish it. You know, so if we don't use control, we're changing the size of the window that it's within. If we do use control, it is resizing the image, the multiple layers, right? Both the box and the thing we put in the box. That's the main difference there. And you notice, like, hey, now that I'm moving this around, this image, it's not quite right? It's like, hey, like, if you click in there, we can start moving this sub thing in, and you notice that it still exists as an object inside the object. This is where that direct select tool matters. If I use that, now I can go in and I can do stuff with the object itself rather than the frame that contains it. So if you got to go dig down and mess with stuff that way, that's where your direct select comes into play. 9 times out of 10, you will never do this, right? You're just going to put your image in because your artist drew it to specific specifications, or it's already, you don't want to squish it, you don't want to stretch it, you want it to be that same size. It's place it, it's fit it, and then that's it. Like, you're not going to touch it from there, other than you might resize the whole box or clip stuff. We can talk about clipping paths and things like that, but that's going to be a more advanced course. Like, that's where you start making pages really pop and really cool. But this at least lets you put an image on a page, lets you put, you know, a cool logo on, you know, and get it on there so you can start wrapping your text around it. And then the other thing, let's talk about text wrap. So if we put this like right, oops, I'm still in my object select. Let's see. that was dumb. I'm just going to size it to whatever the box is so this kind of looks right. And I want to put it smack in the middle here, all right? And it's like, oh, it's covering up the text. Like this can happen too. If we hit this, we've got text wrap options. That's one of our menus. Again, if you don't have that, window, text wrap, you're going to get something like this. And you've got these little icons here. This one says, don't wrap, just put it on there. I know what I'm doing, right? Like it's going to be fine. This one, wrap around the bounding box. So as we've got that frame here, if I hit that, then the text is just going to push around this box as you see here. 9 times out of 10, we're going to use wrap around the object shape because our shape, like the wolf up here, you notice the text wraps around it. If we click on this box, it's going around its bounding box. We've got it wrapped to both sides. We're detecting the edges. Often that's all you have to do. You just choose this, wrap around the object shape, set these things, play with them until it's right, done. And honestly, that's most of what you need to get your text into a document and get things working, right? There's one more thing that I do want to talk about in the basics, and that's layers. So we've got this layers menu. And again, you might not start with it, turn it on. The ones that I absolutely recommend no matter what, pages, layers, links, so you can see where your images are going, text wrap, paragraph styles. You know, most of what you do will be covered by those things. And as you get more advanced and as you add more things, you'll be like, oh, now I want cross-references and bookmarks and character styles, which are super awesome and powerful, but you don't need them at first, right? But you've got these layers. And just like the pages give you your general setup, you've got these layers. And we came built in on our document. You can add them with the plus, you can delete them, blah, 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 blah. But they tell you whether the thing that you're making is going to be on the background, it's going to be the text layer, it's going to be the illustrations, or the, you know, in this case, logo and licensing, right? And these are also their prominence in terms of what goes on top of the other, right? So we could be like, hey, I actually want my text over my illustration. So if I did my wrapping wrong on that other one, it would look right, you know, and I just drag and drop it to where I want it and it moves it, right? Now text is above. That's going to be important is every one of these boxes, every one of these objects that we click on, it has a layer. Hey, see that, you know, I've got my flying finger of fate there. If I click and drag, I can drag it down, and now you notice this box is on the background layer, not the text layer. So if you've got multiple things piling up, that's how you move it. Honestly, I will tell you 90% of the time what will happen is you're going to be placing a new image. You're on the text layer because that's what you work in most of the time. And you're like, oh man, that's stupid. I need this on the illustration layer where it's supposed to be. And that's where you just go here, click on your box with it and go, oh, it's already on illustrations. But my text, because I happened to be clicking on an illustration before, is on top. Never mind, I did it right. So I accidentally did it right. So this is easy, you guys. But if this was on the wrong level, you just grab, drag, and now it's bounding box turns to that color to let you know that where this is important is not just for display stuff, but also when you go to print the PDF or export as PDF, it exports with these layers. And if you've ever looked at a PEG PDF, at the layers in Acrobat or whatever, you can turn off the illustrations so that when it's printer friendly, right? It's like, I don't need this, you know, the colored stuff in the background. And then it's there. And if you mess this up, then when someone actually tries to use that feature and turns off illustrations, but there's still a wolf there, they're like, oh, dang, So that's what those are for. And that's going to cover you and get you started and get you into trouble. And once you get into trouble, that's where we get into like 201, 301, like figuring out what just happened here, like how do I take advantage of some of the truly amazing things that InDesign can do. So that's the basics. Let's jump in. Let's kill that screen. Or actually, let's leave it up because I might have to show people for a question and answer. And if you don't have any, that's great. How much space do I recommend as the buffer around an image to where the text wrap? Well, that is wildly variable, right? So a lot of times we do it visually, and generally, this one's done in points, right? And if you're a printer, you know exactly what points are and what this means. If you're not, you just got to eyeball it. But you can click these up and down and you can see like, all right, let's change it up to 1.6. And now you see that text is pushing away from our outline, and you can go down even, to like nothing where it's right there. Generally, if you're using the picos or whatever, it's the 0.6 is kind of the default, but we will massage that up and down for specific images so that we don't have to mess with the clipping path, or sometimes it just makes the text flow just right when you nudge it a little bit. In millimeters, that usually ends up like 2 or 3 millimeters. In inches, it's the 0.0625 inches or 1.25. Those two are usually the 0.125 is usually the sweet spot. 0.065 is the minimum that I would do. And too much more and it looks weird, right? But great question. And that lets us look at how you set these, right? And then the same thing, the wrap too, you can be like, hey, I just want the right side. Like if I had this image moved over, I would just want the right side, right? Where it's like, if I do wrap to both like before, it's going to try and fit the text in here. And I'm like, oh God, no, don't do that. Just do it over here. So it's going to clip off on the edge there and leave the other stuff alone. Experiment. Something will look good eventually. Next question. Next.
Yeah, a bunch of them, I think, like Tracy had some really good tips. So let me run through those again because you can comment on them.
Yeah.
Let's see. First.
So it's funny because like Shane taught me this 101 course, and then like Simon got me like 102 and 103, and then we all independently find new things, and we have a little meeting once a week where we share them. And Tracy learned on her own separately, so she comes at it from a different angle than a lot of us, and it's great as we share that knowledge. Like, oh man, that would have been really handy to know like 10 years ago. Right?
Before I entirely abandoned that platform out of frustration.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah, exactly. But you learn, and some of these are these hidden shortcuts, right? Like the drag and dropping the layer thing. There is no indication on the screen that does what it does, like until you do it. So it's like, we figured it out. Aha, now you know. Like there's a bunch of hidden things like that. And the deeper you get into it, the cooler they get. But when you start off, it's too much. That's why I like to start basics. Like make a text box. Make a box with a linked image in it. Flow your text. That's most of what you're going to do. Like if that's done, the rest of it, like that's what a paid layout person fixes it from there, right? And if you don't have that person, you just get to play with it for a couple hours and you'll figure it out. Or you're like, I've got a very specific operation I want to do. You Google it, and there's a YouTube that has somebody showing you how to do it. So, yeah. But getting started is the hard part.
So the cool thing is, the link below is the free InDesign template that is on DriveThruRPG for InDesign. And then also during the chat, because folks mentioned that they do stuff like, I think John Dew mentioned that he wants to avoid Adobe and instead use Affinity. So I did post a link to an Affinity template. So that's that link right there. There is a guide from the folks who do our VTT conversions. I think it's like a $4.99 guide that it's actually a tutorial and it's got some great stuff for Affinity. So that is that link.
Yeah.
And then
y'all can do whatever you want. I'm just saying, this is what we do. Like, I want to say, like, practically every publisher out there does this. Like, we will all complain about Adobe. We will all complain about InDesign and the things that it does. However, we will all use it because it is better than the alternatives.
We will all clench our sphincters on the first Tuesday of the month when Adobe rolls out updates and breaks everything that we've ever done.
But also, like, if you want to get into the industry, learning this will pay dividends because it's what everybody uses. Like, you just can't go wrong with it. And once you've got that skill set, it doubles or triples your value, essentially, because you can be like, oh, I will just take that and finish it, rather than I will write a manuscript and now it's got to go through several layers, before it's done. This can just be done. And if you're editing and in this, it's like, oh, I could send you a list of things to change, or I can just change it. Like, it's just done. It's like, I know which editor I would rather use. So yeah, industry standard is the correct term. Yep. But that's why you just can't go wrong learning it. I don't say you need it. I don't say, you should pay for it or anything like that. But man, if you're in there and want to make a PDF and have the 30-day free trial, it is worth plunking around and figuring out.
Right. And if you did go to an institution that's got an EDU or an alumni email, you can still get the student version, even with the alumni email. Don't know why I know that. But that is still a way to get the slightly less expensive version. And then there's also, I think, I have to remember when the last time was at CS before they went to the yearly update model. There are stable versions of InDesign that aren't current, but you might find those.
Good luck.
Everybody else has got.
Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get a newer file, and it's going to go, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this.
Right.
And you're going to give your file to someone else, and they will convert it, and then they'll give it back to you, and it will again be, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah. Good luck. That's a vicious cycle, but yeah, I mean, it really is. It is industry standard, and I'm a Corel guy myself. Like, Corel and InDesign do Bezier curves differently in thought, and so every time I try it, it's like, but it is a super functional program, and it really is what you need to get. The thing is, you're going to do a lot of work, right? And if you ever do want to get it printed or be able to have a evergreen PDF that can be updated and that you can do one of the things that we do, just because we do it as layers for our own internal ease, but we publish our PDFs with layers so folks can turn off the background images for printing. And you'd think that would be a small thing, and there's only a few people who do it. It's the #1 most requested feature when we don't do it or when we forget.
Right, when we forget or merge them or whatever. People are like, what happened to the layers? And we're like, oh, right. Like, that's why we build them the way we do. When you export, you got to make sure to toggle a box, export with layers.
Right, and CryptRate made a good comment that if you do ever hope to have your documents ported to BTD, they actually do have really good scripts that help them save time and energy to correctly format your text if you've correctly formatted it with the correct text. As
with paragraph styles, and you'll need to understand character styles if you're going to go that far, right? Like, you'll need at least 201 to be able to get juice out of that, but it's worth learning, right? Because it makes everything look better.
Right. So if you guys are Ace or Swag and have questions for us for what kind of topics you want to see covered on the future of these streams, we are going to do more of them. So yeah, do send those in, info@pegging.com, and just say, hey, tips for the how-to streams. And
if you do tables in InDesign, we'll just be like, ah, no!
there will be tears during that one because my favorite typo for Pinnacle is in Solomon Kane, where InDesign converted one of the range distances for one of the weapons into a date. So I was like, oh, InDesign, and so I give Simon crap for that all the time. But I think that's my favorite little Savage Worlds Easter egg is that in one of the tables, it got converted to a date. It's like, oh no, don't be too smart. It's like Word and Excel when they get too smart in the formatting for your cells. Like no, don't auto format. I will tell you what the format is.
Well, and that's why my lessons are based around dumb, right? Like brute force, make a box, put your stuff in it, off you go.
Yeah. So appreciate you folks. Sometimes InDesign deserves the
right. We love it and hate it. That's one of those, like, we do too. We're like, oh my God, no. But also then, like, some of the things that it does, and you can tell from how it's laid out, like, it is purposefully built for exactly what we're doing. And trying to, especially unfortunately, once you learn it, because it's what everyone uses, using anything else is like 10 times harder. Like, that's the problem. You're like, oh, InDesign does it this way, and this other thing, like, just like Scribus does it a perfectly legitimate way, but you hit it like a brick wall. Like, oh my God, this is completely unintuitive. It's fine, and it's the same. Like, you learn on Scribus and then come to this, and you're like, oh my God, they do it how? You're like, ah.
Right. We should be glad at least it's not Quark Express. Someone in the thing was like, yeah, I learned back in the 90s. Yeah, Quark Express, late 80s. Here we go. CorelDRAW version 2.0. Woohoo. So actually, since Carl's watching, Carl, sir, maybe we'll have Carl on, because now he's a award-winning layout designer.
Carl is yeah. So like, I do the like ugly whatever. Like, I'm putting my boxes up there and it works or whatever, and then we literally hand it to Carl and go, okay, now make this like not look terrible, And he but because I've built it a certain way, right? Like, he can just change those parents. He can just change those styles, or vice versa. What often happens is he will build a file like what I'm doing that's just got the parents and the styles built in there, and then I can put all of my work in it or write my work into it. There are many that will say that's crazy. They're wrong, right? I write in InDesign. Forget word processors, right?
That's another tip we should totally talk about, actually writing in layout. Like, that's a pro tip. We'll definitely get folks on to talk about that too. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to run them. info@pegging.com, and we'll definitely open Carl to show some of his magic on screen.
Yes, please, because he's
an award-winning digital artist and actually does it professionally and for advertising. So he comes by his cred, legit. But other than that, we have actually an addition to the schedule, folks. So tomorrow at 6 Eastern, we're going to do office hours with Christine Lapp. You'll get to see her new baby. And then we're going to do a stream immediately following that, where it's going to be an open house on, I think we're doing dramatic tasks as the Getting Creative streams. We'll have multiple folks from Peg on talking about how they incorporate dramatic tasks, how they make them spicy and fun and all of that good stuff. And other than that, I think the last time I checked, it was 169,999 on the Kickstarter. So someone lowered their pledge by $1 just so I couldn't say that we had funded during the stream. But so yes, the stretch goal is $1 from being unlocked. So check out the Kickstarter, folks. We got some good stuff going there. And any final thoughts, Darrell, before we head out?
No, just the rabbit hole goes deep. Like, this is your first step into a larger world, but play with it first and learn. Like, get your menu set, figure out how the basics. Then, but like I say, the sights you'll see, they're both terrible and wonderful.
It's like Blade Runner.
Yeah, or I was more like Hellraiser, because I remember when I went, I was like, oh, let me learn how, like, unpinning images or whatever. And, Shane just sends the link from Hellraiser. We have such sights to show you. And it's like, it's true. Yeah.
Oh, but it is awesome. We love these. How many of you are now publishing in Savage Worlds, the swag program, the
and that's why we want to do this, right? Like we want to help you. Like,
so awesome, folks. I forgot the JM link. We'll get that. We'll get that up on social media and all that kind of stuff. So we'll make sure you guys know if you want to throw some cash at JM for his recovery. But other than that, we will see you guys tomorrow for 2 big streams: Christine Lapp and Getting Creative with Dramatic Tasks. So we'll see you guys tomorrow, and get out there and play some Savage Worlds. Cheers, folks.